A murderous geisha, a teenage serial killer, and the Red Room curse.
We're heading back to Japan for a quick series of one-off stories.
It's a full recap of Japan Crime Desu on this episode of So Much Crime,
So Little Time. Hey Dee, so we're recapping this story in Japan today, and on your flight back from Tokyo to the US, you're going to have a lot of time to kill.
Indeed.
I have a great idea for you.
Go on.
Why don't you go to patreon.com/so-much-crime, so little time. Honestly, you could just spend the whole flight just scrolling through all of the wonderful things that we've posted, the early released episodes, the bonus content, the outtakes, the extended time machines, and then somewhere on that flight, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, go ahead and sign up. You can see there's multiple different plans, different features, all kinds of fun benefits. You'll have plenty of time because you're stuck on a plane to go ahead and pick the one that's right for you. Sign up, support the show, patreon.com/so-much-crime, so little time.
The best way to get over jet lag is to support a show like ours. Welcome to So Much Crime, So Little Time. I'm Dee.
And I'm Jeff. And before we start, just a quick warning.
Warning!
This episode will have spoilers for Japan Crime Desu. We're going to discuss the whole catalog.
If you haven't listened yet, you can check out our preview episode on this show. It's the one before this one in your feed. Or stay put, ignore that episode, and just listen to our thoughts on the show overall.
You'll also find a link for Japan Crime Desu in our show notes. As a reminder, this show was released in 2021 and 2022. The hosts are Tamoko and Christi. There are 4 total episodes, plus a real short bonus episode. The regular shows are about 20 to 45 minutes long. In
our preview episode, we discussed episode 1. This was the story of Lindsay Hawker, a 22-year-old British woman who was killed in Japan in 2007. Her killer, Tatsuya Ichihashi, evaded police for 2.5 years, even using plastic surgery to change his appearance. And we had lots of thoughts and feelings on this show, but I wonder, Jeff, as the episodes went on, did your thoughts go on? Or did they not develop any further?
Did I have no thoughts?
Were your thoughts finished?
I had thoughts. I mean, so there's 3 more stories and 3 more episodes. There's the Killer Geisha. That's the second episode. There's a third one's called Boy A. Fourth one's called The Red Room. And then somewhere in there, you could fit in this little bonus one, the Oji-san Ghost.
It's like 4 minutes long.
Something like that. It's definitely under 10. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they were all kind of the same style, the same kind of approach. The things we talked about before of it's basically Christi giving the story and Tamoko kind of coming in with a little bit of commentary. But I don't know. I felt like it kind of went in and out of being a little bit more balanced as it went, but maybe that's in my head.
Yeah. No, I actually agree. I think it was a little bit more balanced, and I thought we saw what we were hoping for, or at least what I was hoping for after the first episode, which was more about Japan, like more from Tomoko's perspective and experience having grown up in Japan. So I thought that was improving. I still don't think the balance was right. I think you called it as 80-20 in episode 1. I probably would have called it 90-10, but anyway, I think we went close to maybe 70-30 at times, but it was still very unbalanced, I think.
Yeah, I was trying to decide after listening to all of this what I thought was like the best things about it. And I think, the concept I think is still of the show is really good.
Oh, excellent. I love it.
And the stories they picked, I think, varied in kind of like how intrigued I was by them. I think the Killer Geisha story was a story I'd heard about actually before. I think this is a very famous story from the 1930s in Japan. And I vaguely remember hearing about this before, but it's a compelling story. I appreciated that they gave kind of the full life story of this woman, Sada Abe, and didn't just focus on the crime. So that one also, I think, had a lot of that context of learning about Japan. We learned a lot of things about both historical and present day Japan. Most of them were about like where people have like pay for sex, but still.
It was just not what I was expecting from episode 2 here. And also likely ignorantly not what I was expecting from Japan. I have never been. I don't know much about it. That's why I was really excited to dive into this podcast. But
you didn't think Japan was freaky like that?
No, I didn't. It
Oh.
was just, it was a lot. I'm again, obviously clearly ignorant. And it was one of the reasons that I wanted to do like a podcast based in Japan, was to kind of see if we could get any like cultural connection. And I suppose for me, from what I've read, and again, maybe incorrect, open to being incorrect, apparently podcasts are not a huge deal. They're not that big in Japan itself. It's not the medium of choice. Again, this is what I've read. Not sure how true it is. And so looking at it from that perspective, and even actually regardless of like who the target audience is here, like it's obviously English speakers because they're speaking in English.
Sure.
My vibe from it is it's an like the target is really America or like the Western world. And maybe I'm reading that wrong, but that's my feeling. And if it is, even when they were making the connections and telling us a little bit about Japan, there was only slight connections made to, say, America. So for one, is it what they call the Love Hotel?
Yeah.
When they were describing that, and Christy brought it back to like a Motel 6 or whatever. And you're like, okay, like you can kind of get the vibe that they're going for here. And then, but then they speak, even when they're speaking about a different area, a different location, there's no scene setting, there's no connection made. It's not like, oh, we're talking about a town, it's, you know, maybe the size of Denver or maybe the size of New York, or like, you know, we're talking rural area, blah, blah, like I don't know, there's no connection. And so I'm like, okay, who is your target audience and how are you connecting the story in Japan with here? And I just feel like we were really lacking there. So we've dealt with stories from other areas, and I feel like they've done that. They've built that connection.
Yeah, it actually, I think that's right. And one of the places that jumped out most to me was when they mentioned Nagasaki, and Christy was like it took her a minute to realize like, oh yeah, I know that from like the 40s and the bombing. It's like, yeah, she's talking about the second city that had an atomic bomb dropped on it. It's like, yeah, we all know Nagasaki. Like that's, but maybe tell us something else about Nagasaki than just like it had a bomb dropped on it in 1945. Like it.
Yeah.
But Tomoko talked about the hamburgers and how it's like it's famous for its burgers, which like what a bizarre and interesting fact.
Bizarre and interesting fact, and not like, let's not go down the history route. Let's not go down don't give me my numbers of how many people live there. It means nothing to me. Give me like the hamburgers. Give me the, you know, the thing it's known for. Like, what kind of vibe are we going for here? Are we going for like a rural like town? Are we going for urban? Are we in the suburbs? Like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
And I was dying for it because they kept hopping around even within each story. And yet I couldn't hop around with them. Like I don't have a concept of Japan in general, but I have no concept of like what type of places we were in each parts of these stories.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, one thing for me, I mean, I think I've said this about other shows in the past, but so I listened to this first while I was out doing something. I was just like putting around the garage doing things. And then I went back and listened to it a second time because when I went back to think about it, I was like, oh, I wasn't really following that because it jumped around so much. Like I got bits and pieces of the story, but I went back and listened to it again while I was sitting at my computer and then just like looking things up as they were talking, looking up the places, looking up. I just Googled Sada Abe and was just reading about her, seeing pictures of, places at the time, because this is so historical, right? This is almost 100 years ago. And it was something that was very widely covered at the time in the news. So there's tons of stuff out there about it. I also did a little bit of fact checking to see like, okay, are we getting the whole story? Like, I'm kind of curious how accurate all this is. And
what did you get from that aspect of it?
I mean, I didn't do an exhaustive fact check, but there were some things that were a little off, a couple times, or were sort of told in a way that was misleading, I think. For example, in the Sada Abe story, they talked about how after her prison sentence, which was only 6 years, they kept talking about how she like disappeared, how she basically was like anonymous and just gone. But that's not exactly true.
No.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't happen until I think like the 1970s, and then there was like a 20-year period
when she went to the convent.
Yeah.
Or the nunnery.
But then she like reemerged again. Like someone I think did like an interview with her in the 90s. So she didn't really disappear for like all that long.
Well, this is it. It feels like they listened to one or read one thing about it and went with it. I don't know. I also, do you know, the other, like, I would love to do a deeper dive into the accuracy of the things, of the stories in general, like where the facts are coming from. But I actually read up on Sada Abe as well. And I had noticed that a couple of things that I was like, wow, you really didn't lean into this. Like, I felt like with that story in particular, and kind of with a lot of them, they were leaning into the more like salacious, anything to do with sex was like, that's where we're gonna lean. It was weird to me, like even with the killer geisha, there's very little empathy or connection made between the sexual assault or the rape that she endured when she was a teenager to her life. Like, it is mentioned, and then it's like, oh, and then she became more promiscuous after that, and blah blah blah. And it's like, whoa, I feel like we're really skipping over it, and we never come back to it. Like, we never come back to the fact that like her life played out the way it has played out, and you know how much of this is down to this assault that has happened, that happened to her as a teenager, and like the impact that can have. And not like lay into it too much, we don't need to do that, but I just felt like it was fact, and like laughing throughout of like, I don't know, even in Boy A, when they were talking about, and I have so many questions about Japan, and the way they deal with teenagers who commit crimes, like as horrific as we heard in Boy A. But it was like, the thing that's like sitting out most is them giggling over the vibrator that was actually the massage gun of the grannies that he then used, and that was the connection made between him and death and like sexual gratification. And I'm just like, this is what we're focusing on. Like, that's what we're.
Yeah, this is a teenage boy who murdered children, small children, multiple children, and
tortured and murdered them in like horrendously like brutal crimes. And what we're leaning into and laughing at here is, I don't know, I was just like, this feels weird. Like, it didn't feel comfortable as a listen. And I do feel like so many aspects of this podcast, I feel like if they had kept it going, that it could get better. And I feel like they might tighten up on some of the things that I don't like. Maybe other people who like, you know, the more, I don't know even how to say it, like the more jovial side, like that kind of take on true crime, could enjoy it. And I've seen loads of reviews, well, not loads, but I've seen a handful of reviews of people saying like they loved the chemistry, they loved whatever. But that to me just feels, you can't be at that.
Well, I actually think it got, I think the geisha story was the most well told for all the things that we've pointed out about it. I think it actually, so you go from that one to Boy A to the Red Room. We haven't talked about the Red Room yet, but I honestly think that was the weakest episode. I thought it was the most sort of slapped together, hard to follow. Again, we're talking about children murdering children, like in some really gruesome things. And I just felt like it was handled just way too flippantly and for the subject matter.
Completely. Like, you're talking about, you know, a teenager with, absolutely. It was weird. It felt weird. I'm like, I don't know what your angle is here, but it's not good.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're on the same bit. I think this has so much potential. There's so many good ideas behind this show, and just it didn't. Maybe if it had gone on longer, maybe if it had gotten through 10 or 20 episodes, they would have tightened it up a little bit. Yeah. And the balance could have been better. I think they also needed some editing, honestly. Like, I think definitely included some things in here that I certainly would have cut a variety of types of things.
Definitely felt like, I mean, there was one point in the short bonus episode, a teacher's name was mentioned. They're like, oh, we have to cut that out of the episode. I'm like, but you didn't.
You didn't.
I'm listening to it.
I mean, there's one where someone comes in and is like filling up his water bottle in the room they're recording
Clinton.
in. What? Why do you leave that in?
I don't know. This is like you leaving in me saying goodbye to Max. Like, we're not doing it.
No, that will not be in the episode. That's what Patreon is for. Patreon is.
I know.
Anyway.
I don't know. Yeah. I did try and find them, trying to figure out where it's gone, what the story is, but there's nothing out there.
I mean, it sounds like Christy, like her job went to halftime. Maybe, I mean, I presume she left Japan. That's my speculation. She went back to where she came from and lived out her days.
That's America, Jeff. She's back here.
She could be among us.
That's what's going to happen. I'm just going to move home to Ireland, and then it'll be no more. There'll be nothing.
Oh.
And then 4 years from now, someone will be saying, God, I wish they had kept going. 75 episodes wasn't enough.
Hey, Dee, what do the reviews say about this show?
Oh, yeah. Let me see if I got anything. This is currently one of my favorite podcasts. I've always been somewhat interested in crime and Japan and their THEORE culture. So I thought this podcast would be for me. It was. I watched all the episodes of it in a day in the car. I think it was you listened, but anyway. I genuinely enjoyed it and I think they deserve more listens. Extremely underrated. Please check them out. I'm kind of sad since they haven't made a new episode in a while, but I just hope they're doing okay.
Oh, that took a turn at the end.
It did.
Yeah, I just presume these were written by their friends, but maybe not.
I think they might be.
Okay.
My first time listening to a true crime podcast. Oof, this is not what they're all like. And I love it. The way the hosts have chemistry. I didn't think they had that much chemistry. And interest over what they talk about is wonderful to listen to. That's a bizarre one because like they've interest over what they talk about. Like they're interested in true crime. That's what you like about it.
I do think
I'm interested in true crime, but
I think they have chemistry together. Like, I think they clearly are having fun together and bounce off each other well.
Do you think is it an enjoyable listen well, though? I feel like they talk over each other and I don't know what they're saying and their levels were up and down. Sorry, I'm really laying into them now. There was parts of it that I was like, I do not know what was just said.
Yeah, no, that's a problem. No, all right, you're right. That's a problem. I can't disagree with that. I really wanted to like this.
I really wanted to like it too. And I really think that some of the stories were interesting. I actually think the ghost story might have been my favorite one.
Oh, so the bonus episode about the little ghost in the classroom.
Yeah, that was terrifying.
It kind of was terrifying. The description of the ghost was...
Not kind of. Like the kids and then the older kids are all seeing the ghost.
All right. You've worked with small children.
One saw it and then everyone else saw it.
Kids are full of shit. And I'm sorry. Doesn't matter. I do not believe them. There was a dark connection where it's like, yeah, this teacher got really sick and they don't know what's wrong with her.
Yeah, but they said that she got really sick and they didn't know what was wrong with her. And I was like, oh my God. And then they're like, yeah, she's been sick for like 2 weeks. I'm like,
yeah, I don't know.
In 2022. And they did, they mentioned COVID, but like.
And we almost learned an interesting amount about ghosts and the belief in ghosts in Japan. Like we got tidbits of that.
So close.
But just not quite.
The good and the bad. I think that's all we got.
So I think if Christi and Tamoko are out there, they should take our notes, restart the podcast, just clean up a couple things. We'd be happy to be guests on it and share our thoughts. Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
I have questions that I'm sure they could answer and find out what happened to that ghost and that teacher. Did she ever come back? Love to know. That was a couple of years ago. Yeah, I guess that's my closing thought.
Chin chin.
I learned some Japanese.
Me too. That is all I'll remember from that podcast.
Yep. And
anyway,
how to get sex in Japan.
Yeah. The helpful things that you need as you go and explore a new city.
So bland. I mean, get a bath and see what happens.
It was there were some interesting laws that I heard about, but yeah, they were all like, I have so many questions.
Do you think, side note, it sounds like Tamoko has checked out some of these places.
Oh yeah, and was okay saying that even like in middle school. It sounded like she was like, "Oh yeah, me and my boyfriend and blah blah blah." I'm like, "Are your parents not going to listen to this?"
Yeah, maybe that's why they stopped.
Maybe that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey D, if you're still on that flight from Japan and you've already subscribed to our Patreon and you're like, man, what else can I do to help out this show? I know just the thing. Go to Apple Podcasts, go to Spotify, wherever you're listening. Make sure you've left a 5-star rating for us. And if you have, definitely go and write a review. Leave a comment on an episode or write a review of the whole show. Those things really help to support us, help other people find the show. After you've done that, get up from your seat. If you're in the middle seat or the window seat, you're going to have to ask your neighbors to let you get up. Go up and down the plane. You can go with the drink cart if you want. Just walk along behind. They'll be fine with that. They won't mind. And just as they're handing out drinks or snacks, say, hey, you look bored. It's a long flight. Let me tell you about this podcast. If the flight attendants let you get on the PA, even better. But however you want to do it, by the time you land, wherever you're landing, everybody on that plane will know about So Much Crime, So Little Time, and we really appreciate it. One plane at a time.
Thank you.
What's next, Dee?
All right, Jeff. Next up, we are going to a pretty established podcast. This podcast has had over 28 million downloads and was the #1 Australian podcast, the #1 UK, Canada, and New Zealand podcast, and has won awards. It is really acclaimed, and I want to jump into it. Are you ready to spend 19 hours listening to a true crime podcast, The Teacher's Pet?
That sounds amazing. I don't know. What's the right word for that?
You're like, feck that, I'm out.
19 hours, huh?
Yeah, 19 hours of your life.
Well, I
ready?
mean, that's about flying to Australia and back from here, so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's actually flying to Ireland and back, because that's where I'm going to be listening.
All right, Teacher's Pet. That's what's up next.
Yep, that's on the next So Much Crime.
So Little Time. So Much Crime, So Little Time is a production of Mind Glove Media. The executive producer is Paxton Caloriso. Our associate producer is Blythe Ty. Our theme music was composed by Vyacheslav Starostin. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to this show on your podcast app. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review. Even better, tell your friends. To join the discussion, look for us on social media. Check out the show notes for all the links. Thanks for listening.